If you are currently leveling up your Django skills with this tutorial, just to let you know, this tutorial is part of a free YouTube playlist, Django Database Structural Testing, where we learn how to set up and utilize PyTest for database structural testing within Django projects. If you like this tutorial and playlist, then also check out our Django Database ORM Mastery course on Udemy. The link to the course and playlist should be found in the video description. Next up, let's go ahead and verify that the column lengths within our models have been defined correctly and they are aligned with our database design requirements. If we take a look at our category model design, you can see that after some of the names of the fields, we have the parentheses and then a number. This number represents the maximum column length or the maximum amount of characters that can be used for this field. So we're limiting the amount of data that can be stored within the field. So let's start by, as we typically do, by defining our mark. And again, we utilize the PyTest mark parameterize because, again, we're going to test for multiple fields here. So this is going to allow us to set up the data for that. So let's pass in the model, the field name, and this time the expected length. Okay, so we have a few fields. So the first field being the name that has a maximum length of 100. Let's go back to the design. We are going to ignore the slug field for now, although it does specify here 120, because I want to show you something, the default value of the slug, which isn't normally commonly known. So let's just go for category name 100. And let's just finish this test. Now, I have also noticed that there is a default value here for the level. I accidentally forgot that in the previous test. So let's just quickly add that into the previous test. Apologies. So level and the default value should be 100. So we will need to add that within our model here. So let's go for default equals 100. In our model. So let's just test to make sure that we have updated that correctly. So we do have one error. We have an invalid syntax. So let's take a look with it, or maybe because we've not actually finished the previous test. So let's just comment that out. Apologies for this change. Let's clear that. Try that again. You can see the test has passed. So we've just tidied up, apologies, the previous test. Just make sure the model is updated. The level has a default value of 100, and we tested that now to make sure that is the case. So let's go back, apologies, to our test to ensure that the column lengths align. So we're going to start with the category model, the name field 100. So let's build the function for that, the test function. So that's going to be test model structure, and then let's call this column, or the expected column lengths, up to you. And we pass in the model field name and expected length. So like before, we just grab the field. So we'll copy the code, previous code. So we're going to need the field. So we grab the field by the field name. And now we can run our assert to check if the max length matches the expected value. So assert, and let's go for field dot. In this case, it's going to be max length is equal the expected length. That's what we're passing in, and we can add the error text should there be a problem. And there we go. So let's try that out. So we'll go ahead and run that, and it passes all okay. Now here's the interesting part. If we have a look at the slug, notice that we haven't actually specified the maximum length. But if we were to now add that in to our test, so let's add the slug field, and let's just define that as 100, for example, Let's go back into our test and run this out. You can see that we failed because in actual fact, the slug field has an unexpected max length. We've defined 100. However, the default value for the slug field is a max length of 50. Now, when you think about it, your name has been set to 100. So you might have a name set with 100 characters. However, the slug is typically formed from the name in most cases. And you can see that it has a default value of 50. So in actual fact, we wouldn't be able to potentially convert that name into a slug without truncation, without actually shortening the name, which might not be useful in your scenario. So what we want to do in actual fact, like the design specifies, we want to set the max length for our slug field to something a little bit larger than maybe the name, which is set at 100 for now. So let's set that to 120. That of course meets our specification, our design specification, 120. So with that set, let's go back into our test. Let's change that to 120. Let's test to make sure that now is correct. Looks like everything is passed and we can move on.